Fallen Leaves Publishing presents Tales from the Tank, Season 1, Episode 1, Teensie Talks, written by Porsche Ray and read by Mallory Peters. This is companion material for Book 1 in the Melinda series. Introduction. Tales from the Tank are short stories that are companions to the larger standalone novels in the Melinda series. They can be read before, after, or simultaneously with their corresponding novel. This story happens alongside Chapter 1 in Melinda and Her Father Go Scuba Diving, Book 1 of the Melinda series. Where the main books in Melinda focus on Melinda herself, Tales from the Tank is from Teensie's perspective and will introduce you to things Melinda is unaware of. Preface. Hi, I'm Teensie, Melinda's pet fish. I figure, since she gets to tell her stories, I should be able to tell mine as well. You and I, well, we probably don't have much in common. I am a goldfish after all, and I need to be submerged in water to survive. You likely live on the dry side and breathe air and all that. I think you'll be surprised at how similar our stories actually are. Listen on for a behind-the-scenes peek at what really goes on in the Longer's house. Season 1, Episode 1. Teensie Talks. Electricity jolted through my body. From the outer edge of my tail fin, it crawled along my scales to my gills. What was happening? Blurp, I said. I liked to blurp. I blurped a lot. It was the only thing my thick fish lips could really do. Well, they could blurp, and they could eat. But they couldn't eat if there wasn't any food in the water. And there wasn't any food in the water right now. So I blurped and swam in a large, lazy circle around my tank. Usually at this time of night, I'd be drifting along the bottom, sleeping. Tonight was different. A storm raged outside the Longer's house, and rain and hail pummeled the windows. I was doubly protected from it. Not only did I have the house around me, but I also had my tank. It wasn't that part of the storm that was keeping me awake. Thunder boomed and lightning flashed. It was like when they had bought a new light for my tank, and Melinda had spent the day turning it on and off, over and over again. The thunder made the water around me rumble and shake. So, instead of sleeping, I swam and I blurped. Except, it was different somehow. Not the swimming part, the blurping part. That's strange, said a voice. My eyebrows shot up. I had thought the same thing, at precisely the same time someone had said it. Except, there wasn't anyone around to say anything. Who said that? Asked the voice. It was a good question, one I wanted to know the answer to as well. I looked around my tank. What's going on? Asked the voice. There was nothing inside my tank that could explain what I was experiencing. No new bubble machine. Nothing funny stuck in the filter. No new toys or other fish friends? Blurp, I said. My lips felt different, like they were too thick or too thin. Something was wrong with them, and it was messing up my blurping. It still sounds funny, said the voice. My eyes went wide. That had been my thought. Whoever the voice was, they were right. My blurp still sounded funny, but it was nowhere near as strange as their voice was. "Who are you?" asked the voice. I spun around frantically. If I was going to introduce myself, I'd like to know who I was introducing myself to. But I didn't see anything at all that could explain what was happening. Maybe it was a ghost? Sometimes Melinda and her father watched shows that had ghosts in them. I didn't really understand the allure, but hey, if it kept Melinda entertained, then it kept her hands out of my tank. Now that was a scary thought. Had Melinda snuck out of bed to do some late-night fishing again? I looked around carefully. She could be very sneaky. "I don't see her," said the voice. The voice was making me nervous. I'd feel better if I at least knew who I was up against. "Blurp," I said. "Blurp, blurp." I tried really hard to make my blurps sound the way they had before. I'd been doing it my entire life. It really shouldn't be hard. My lips didn't feel right, and my mouth felt like it was moving in strange ways. "I hope whoever is out there believes that I'm just a little fish and should be left alone," said the voice. "I can't deal with two problems at once. I need to figure out what's wrong with my blurping. What if it's cancer? Or something even more serious?" I was scared now. Somehow, whoever was out there had gotten inside my head. I knew all about cancer from the veterinary shows I watched with Melinda. Sometimes, they even had to do surgery on little fish like me. I didn't think that would be something I would like. "Who are you?" asked the voice. "That's what I was just going to say," said the voice. "Wait, stop," said the voice. I swam to the side of my tank. Melinda had drawn me a picture of kelp and taped it to the side. Of course, she had also drawn a picture of a shark and taped that to the other side, and laminated a picture of her smiling face that she put inside the tank, so it looked like her head was popping out of the bottom. The kelp picture was the only one I even sort of liked. Not that Melinda or anyone else ever bothered to ask me for my opinion. "Are you me?" the voice asked. I looked into the kelp picture and watched myself carefully. I was able to see a pretty good reflection from this angle. "Blurp," I said, watching how my lips moved. "There's definitely something off about them. I just can't pinpoint what it is," said the voice. As the voice spoke, my lips, the same lips I used to blurp with, moved in a very human-like way. I wasn't trying to say blurp, but they were still moving. "Can I talk?" asked my reflection. I watched the fish lips moving in the glass as I heard the strange voice. "Blurp," I said, watching carefully as my lips moved. At least now I knew what was wrong. Something had happened to my lips that made my blurp sound like a word and not just a fish sound. "Blurp, blurp," I said again just to be sure. There was no doubt. "I can talk," Reflection Me said. I turned away from it. "I can talk!" I yelled. This wasn't Reflection Me talking, or someone who had snuck into the house. This was me, the real me. I was making sounds that my lips had never been able to make before. I was creating words. I wondered if the humans were going to be able to understand me. Maybe I would finally be able to tell them what I needed, when I needed it, instead of having to suffer in silence until they found the time to notice me. I could call out when the water was too hot or too cold. I could let them know if I wanted a little extra food, or when I didn't like the new brand of food they ordered from the online store. I swam around my tank as fast as I could. This was no longer the lazy swim of a tired fish who wished the storm would stop so he could get some sleep. This was the excited swim of a champion fish who just realized his entire life could possibly be changing. This was one of those moments they made movies about. I started chanting, "I can talk. I can talk. I can talk," over and over as I swam around and around in my tank. I started to feel tired and stopped mid-fin flap as an intrusive thought seized my brain. What if I fell asleep and lost this ability? I mean, I was pretty sure it had happened because of the electricity that had surged through me and the tank, but I couldn't be sure. What if something else was going on and sleeping returned me to normal? I looked down at the small no fishing sign I liked to sleep beside. I didn't have eyelids, but I did spend long periods of time in off mode, just drifting along the bottom of my tank. Maybe if I just stayed away from the bottom of the tank, I'd stay awake? Then I had another thought. What were my owners going to say? I had been so excited about everything that I had just realized I might be able to do. But actually doing any of that would require their cooperation and support. What if they didn't want to support me? What if they didn't want a talking fish around? Would I tell them? Should I tell them? Were the possible changes in my life worth the risk of being discarded? It could be a real game changer if they were able to understand what I had to say. But how would Melinda react when I shared with her how much I hated it when she put her hands in my tank? What would she say when I told her it hurt when she pet my scales? Would they respect me enough to allow me to put up new boundaries? Or would they laugh at me and do the things I hated even more? I felt my little body shudder. I hated it when Melinda grabbed me, but until now, I hadn't had a way to tell her. She thought that when I ran away from her, I was playing a game of tag. She thought that if I hid from her, I was playing hide and seek. And she thought that if I stayed still and let her pick me up, it was because I wanted snuggles. Now, there was the possibility that I could use words to correct the misunderstanding, if it really was a misunderstanding. At least, I hoped I could use words. I hadn't actually tried them out on a human yet. Try to stay positive, I said out loud, feeling like hearing it might help me actually believe that it was possible. I couldn't think of a way to get my needs met without sharing my ability with them. I was going to have to risk it. Swimming back and forth, I practiced saying the things I thought I'd likely need to say the most. I'm hungry was the first one. More food, please, was next. Don't touch me was after that. Though, really, it should have been first on my list. I wondered if there were other fish out there who could talk. Surely I wasn't the first one ever who had been hit by lightning. Had it somehow made me more human? Or was I still a fish, just with a human-like ability? I stopped swimming. Was I going to have to go out and get a job now, like Melinda's father? I pushed my face out of the wet and into the dry. My gills gasped and screamed in my brain until I submerged them again. Nope. Unless there was a job I could do underwater, that idea was off the table. For now, I was still stuck in the wet. Then another thought went through my head. A good thought this time. I wondered if the electricity had given me any other power. Like, maybe I could turn on the TV or change the channels by myself whenever I wanted to, just by thinking about it? With a grin, I tried. I stared at the TV. I squinted at the TV. I flung my fin in the TV's direction. I failed. The TV stayed a dark, empty, black box. It didn't even flicker. My grin didn't fade, though. TV powers weren't the only powers on my mind. I had a growing list of superpowers to test out before Melinda and her father woke up, and I needed to try each and every one. Author's note. Enjoyed this short story? Give the main series a try. Melinda is available in print, digital, and audiobook formats. Looking for a free copy? Request your local library to stock them. Or join my special review team. Check my website for details. PorscheRay.com. The end. This has been a Fallen Leaves Publishing production of Tales from the Tank. Season 1, Episode 1, Teensie Talks. Written by Porsche Ray and read by Mallory Peters. Produced, directed, edited, and mastered by Fallen Leaves Publishing. To listen to samples and learn more about the authors, please visit the Fallen Leaves Publishing website at fallenleavespublishing.com. The Melinda series is available wherever you buy your books. Source copyright and production copyright 2022 by Fallen Leaves Publishing.